Smoked or not smoked, Russ?
You know, we wanted to smoke it really bad, but we didn't have a proper smoker. Unfortunately, I do at home, but it didn't help me any up there.
Yeah. Smoked or not smoked, Russ?
You know, we wanted to smoke it really bad, but we didn't have a proper smoker. Unfortunately, I do at home, but it didn't help me any up there.
Smoked or not smoked?
You know, we wanted to smoke it really bad, but
Oh, wait, it keeps repeating.
we didn't have a proper smoker.
You're on a loop.
I do at home, but it didn't help me any up there.
Okay, it is official. We have a quorum.
Okay. Ooh, but we have an issue. How that must be coming from YouTube.
Okay, it is official. We have a quorum.
Okay.
Interference.
Woohoo! Okay, it's official. We have a quorum of 4.
Okay.
We may begin this meeting of the Southeast I-80 Horseshoe Bar Road or Taylor Road Downtown Business Corridor.
All right, everybody, we ready to start then? Sounds good. The time is 3:03, September 23rd. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Before we do that, though, we are meeting here in the train depot. We do have one member of the public so far. We're also on Zoom, and how you get on the Zoom platform is available on the agenda. Let's do our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, let's have roll call.
Chairperson Jan Clark-Kretz.
Here.
Bonnie London. Russ Kelly.
Here?
No Jenny and no Tim. Maureen Valley.
Here.
And no Ryan DiMartini. Auxiliary member Jean Wilson.
She's here.
She's here. And Ramona Brockman.
Here.
I see her
She's
here.
here too.
Okay.
All right, now it's time for committee comment for items that are not on the agenda. Anybody on our committee have anything they'd want to discuss not on the agenda? Anybody in the public have anything they want to discuss not on the agenda? All right, hearing and seeing none. I would now like to have perhaps a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I move we approve tonight's agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Jan Clark-Kretz.
Yes.
Bonnie London.
Yes.
Russ Kelly.
Yes.
Maureen Valley. Yes. Okay, thank you.
All right, now public comment for the consent agenda. Anybody on our panel or in the public have anything they'd like to say about our consent agenda?
Any members of the public participating on Zoom, you can raise your hand and I will unmute you.
Hearing and seeing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Need a second? Anybody?
I second.
Oh, Russ Kelly seconds. Roll call, please.
Jan Clark-Kretz.
Yes.
Bonnie London.
Yes.
Russ Kelly.
Yes.
And Maureen Valley. Yes.
All right, going to move right over to committee matters and hand it over to Mary Beth.
Thank you and welcome everybody. We haven't met in a while. Our last meeting was May 27th. So I'd like to take an opportunity to, for either Christy or Mark Teague, our consulting staff on this matter, if you can give us a brief rundown on where we left off and then go forward from there. We have the draft minutes in the agenda package that just got approved, but they're action minutes, so it really doesn't give a lot of content.
Well, seeing as how Christy's volunteering me, I'll go ahead and talk through this. We started to look through the goals and policies of the existing general plan for the town, and made some comments considering them, and had a little bit of discussion. One of the topics that the subcommittee was looking most at was, what is the downtown core and how do we define it? Because there are numerous policies throughout the general plan that refer to the downtown core, either in passing or as part of specific policies. And that's not really defined anywhere. I mean, it's been defined in a couple of different auxiliary documents, but there is that. We also took a look at land use, and I'll go over a little bit here on that. And since we have met, there have been requests by the public to change some of the land use designations, and we'll go over those this afternoon as well. And we took a run at some of the text in the plan, and our goal is to go through that again this afternoon, have the committee add, subtract, multiply, or divide any of the text that's in there, and then at the end of it all decide whether or what to recommend to the overall committee. The idea is that we have a diminishing responsibility. So over time, we make decisions and don't have to revisit them. Does that cover everything? And I'll go over more when I have the PowerPoint here. You can certainly ask questions.
I think you covered it.
Thanks, Mark.
Didn't mean to put you on the spot there, but I thought it was important.
You the boss. Would you like me to start the PowerPoint now, Chair? Or
Yeah, yes, please. Thank you.
Outstanding. Technology going. This. Right. So we kind of went over the agenda. We'll have the study area narrative. We have a little bit of information on build out. We have goals, policies, and implementation measures as they're drafted with edits. This is all information that's on the settings section of the document that you will find on the city or the town's website. Then there'll be land use changes discussion, community recommendations, and then we have to find about 2 acres, a little over 2 acres of high density residential land to help address something that's in our housing element. We're asking all of the subcommittees, so don't feel you've been singled out. And if something pops up that's interesting, then we can certainly forward that to the full committee. And then, of course, the important public requests on this. And I don't remember, Christy, are these all owners, or some of them have owners and some have just members of the public thought it was a good idea?
I think they're almost both. Almost both owners. So one of them is a friend of an owner who's making a request on another parcel. So it's closely related, but not by the actual owner.
Sounds like decisions in my house that I made that my wife made for me. Got it. Okay.
One is definitely owned by the commenter.
And we have more detail on that as I move through. So this is just the overall agenda, what we hope to accomplish. So as a reminder, this is the area of discussion that we have here. And it's essentially Taylor Road from top to bottom. And we can refer to this map later on during discussion. You'll see this map a lot as we go through. And it stops on Horseshoe Drive, just short of Library Drive. And that may be a pivotal discussion at some points. How far down Horseshoe do you want to go for the downtown core? Do you want to call it downtown core? Do you want to call it town core? I know these seem like small things, but we need to call it something if we're going to use policies to describe it, and then be consistent within the general plan, or Andreas will be annoyed with us. So we don't have to make that decision right now, but it is something that you should be thinking about.
Hey, Mark, can I ask you a quick question back on that map?
Of course.
And remind me, if you would, that BP property, did we decide, as this committee decide that they wanted to include that BP property in this group? Or, I remember we talked about it, but,
BP properties in the Sierra College group. I don't know if
Okay.
they ever made a decision. When this committee, subcommittee last met, this was still being talked about by the Sierra College committee.
okay, thank you.
Although it does make sense to include it if we're going to create it, but I believe that the planned uses there would be residential.
Okay, well, maybe what we can do is just keep this committee updated on the other, just so that they can have an idea of what's happening with that. Thank you.
Absolutely. And if somebody wants more information about why the Sierra College subcommittee decided that was no longer really good BP land, let me know and I can certainly explain that. Okay, let's talk a little bit about some numbers. This was a request to show what the build out of the town would be if we just scraped everything clean and built. These numbers have been presented to all of the subcommittees. Those of you that have been to a number of these meetings are probably tired of seeing them. The calculations here are shown both as 100%, and that is a purely mathematical construct, and then also at 80%. And 80% was chosen because that's what the state recognized in our housing element as potential development. They don't recognize 100% because very seldom can 100% be reached. 80% is what they would accept for our vacant land calculations, and that's what we've used here for consistency. These are neither targets nor goals of the town. These are simply numbers to demonstrate that we already have quite a bit of development potential within the community. Then, of course, because spreadsheets are really excellent at this, we've isolated to just our area of study. And you can see here vacant lots, net acreage at build out, population, and those types of things that can go through there, both at the 100% and at the 80% level based on just our existing land use designations. Okay, this is a map of vacant or underdeveloped land. It really doesn't mean much, except that in the planning world, it's often easier to make changes to vacant land because the owner may be open to that, trying to get something else to happen. But for our discussion, it's simply a piece of information we wanted to provide to the subcommittee. Doesn't really have any bearing on the general plan necessarily. We just wanted you to see what we show as vacant. Okay, so goals, policies, and objectives. I don't know if you all recollect this from our previous discussion. We went through some of these. Some of these have comments. The strikeout text has been recommended just based on a review. There's no magic to any of this. If we don't want the text to go away, we can do that. We've had some comments here about what we should do and how we should do things, some discussion, and we can go through this as the committee. And the idea would be that once we've gone through this, this can be pulled directly into the larger land use element for the town, and then would represent the development policies for this area. So we'll do that in a second when I'm done, but I just wanted you to know you'll see that in just a few minutes.
Excuse me, Mark, when we get to there, can you blow that up a little bigger screen-wise for us?
How's that, Mary Beth?
Other way.
Something
There
like
you
that.
go.
All
Yeah.
right. I will do that. Okay. And
Thank
please, if you can't see something, let me know. I'll be happy to blow it up.
Okay.
Figuratively, not literally. And so we'll have decision points at each part of this meeting, so that the idea is to make decisions and move forward, so we're not constantly revisiting the same discussion, knowing, of course, that your recommendations will go to the full umbrella committee and then ultimately to the planning commission and to the council. One of the things that we've asked multiple times throughout the entire process is, does the committee have any recommendations for land use changes within the area that we're discussing? Is there anything that pops up as being problematic? Is there anything here that is something that you, gosh, I've always wondered why that's that and why it can't be something else? Now is the time to talk about that, and we can go over that. when we get to this point in the meeting. But from our perspective, what we've heard pretty much by and large from every subcommittee and most of the public is that there's not a desire for substantive change to the land use pattern of the town. And as I mentioned, we need to come up with 2.2 acres of land. And if there's something that the subcommittee says, you know what, this might be a good spot for that, that would be helpful to point that out and recommend it to the land use umbrella committee. And putting homes, particularly high density homes near your downtown, is one way of increasing commerce. And it is something that it's the way it used to be done. And then we moved all the houses away from downtown and we realized that was a bad idea. And now the trend is to move housing into downtown with more mixed use, but that's entirely up to the town about how you want to do that. But we do need to find somewhere in town 2.2 acres.
Can I ask, is the Homewood property off the table?
If I knew what the Homewood property was, I would be able to answer that.
It's that lumber yard that relocated to Rockland, right on the corner of Sierra College and Brace.
Is it?
Maureen, the Homewood property sold to Kinesils Auto Collision Repair, and they received approval to proceed with operations at that location.
Okay. Too bad.
I'm going to go with yes.
Yes.
So it's one of the things we can talk more about this as we move through this afternoon. And then public requests. We have 4 public requests, and they're listed here on the map. Let's see. This is the first one, number 2, number 3. I don't know if you can see this or not. And see, number 3 is on King Road. That's right here. It's really, really tiny. And then number 8 is, where did I see number 8? Here's number 8, way up here. And then number 17, which I think is actually type.
It's on Webb Street.
Yeah. So those are the changes that have been requested. This is really a high-level check of what's been requested and why. And we have additional documentation that was provided to the subcommittee that looks like this. So when it comes to that point, we can certainly pull this up. This came off of the spreadsheet, the comment spreadsheet that is available online. And this excerpt was sent to the subcommittee as part of the agenda materials.
General committee information with all of the land use designation change requests that we've received. We did send out certified mailings to property owners, as some property owners suggested those changes. They asked for them, but then in other instances, public members have. So I'm just starting to receive those responses in and talking to people about what that all means. If they didn't suggest it for their own property, they have no idea what's going on. So it takes about 20 minutes to get through a conversation, get them on board. And then I included a return envelope so that they could check a box. I wish to pursue this land use designation change. I do not wish to pursue, or I would like information. So I'm even starting to get some of those response letters back. So we will be updating the land use sheets, the change request sheets based on property owner compliance.
All right. This is just additional information that we've provided to all of the subcommittees for their area. It has to do with non-conforming parcels. Some of this is just weird to me because they were created parcels and they shouldn't be non-conforming like this down in here. I was out here just Saturday. I went out here and took a bunch of pictures of this particular development. And so I don't know if all of these are truly non-conforming parcels or just a consideration. And the real purpose of the maps for the subcommittees was in discussion of general plan changes and densities. And then that's it. So going back up to the top, let's look at this. Can you read that?
Perfect.
Okay, so in many of these instances, the recommendation here is because these are pretty big goals. Maintain the small town character of Loomis. One of the things we've discussed is this is kind of a general goal. Again, our focus is on the town core, whatever we want to call it. And this might be something that's a larger goal for the town as a whole, because I think the goal is still important, but there's certain terms we'll have to define. What is a small town? What is a small town character? And we'll certainly be discussing that with all the subcommittees and the umbrella committee, and then ultimately with the council. So the commission. But in this context, we want to focus on goals that are specific to the downtown, to the town core. And so the recommendation here is that this get rolled up into the larger land use and isn't really just a downtown issue. Or it needs to be better defined by this subcommittee so that we have an idea of what we mean by it. Any thoughts?
Anybody on the committee have any thoughts on this? So, Mark, I do have a question about organizing. I know we're going to sort of maybe move some things around. Because of all these subcommittees, is the format of the land use section going to be representative of each subcommittee? Or, I mean, I understand you're probably going to have the goals for the major land use, but then are you going to change the format of the general plan is what my question is, to include each of these areas?
The short answer is yes. The long answer is the format isn't going to change all that significantly, because as it stands now, you define your designations, you have a table, and then you go into specific, what is it they call it, policies for specific areas. This would fall into the policies for specific areas. My plan is to add some maps so that people know what you're talking about and what the policies go to. From a formatting standpoint, my ideal is we have a map on one page, and on the facing page, however that works, there would be the policies that pertain to that area. So you could theoretically hand somebody a single piece of paper that had a map on one side and the policies on the other. I don't know that we'll be able to pull that off, because in some cases there's more policies than we have room for. But that's kind of my visual, is to make it easy for people to pull it up and understand what the town wants.
Yeah, I think that would be awesome, personally. I see some hands up. I'm not sure who was first. Jean? You're muted, Jean. Jean, we still can't hear you. You're muted.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I understand on the first point, maintain the small town character, that we're doing that in a general way, but I think there's a sense in which it's also important than when we're talking about the goals for this particular area, that people understand if they're going to come and put in a business, that we want something that does maintain or retain the, not just that we'll take any old business and, as long as it's meets the standards of the health department or whatever, it's fine. I'm just wondering, are we potentially losing something by not mentioning anything about that, when that's something that's really important to us in this area?
Mark?
Jean, could you kind of just,
if you're going to use it, it needs to be better defined. That's all. Because small town is not a land use term. There's no way you could point to it and deny a project based on it. Small towns aren't even defined anyway. Sorry, Andy. So what may be small to Loomis may not be small to somebody from San Jose.
so Jean, how would you describe Taylor Road downtown? What would you like to see And is there a place that you could say this is kind of like what we'd like to see? And I think if you could talk about it and other committee members could talk about it, between Mark, Christy, Lucy, and I, we can come up with some language.
Maybe part of it has to do with historic kind of building character, the architecture, not just fruit sheds, but if you look around, we've got, for instance, the one that used to be the Mutual Supply. We've got Christensen's has the shed roof kind of along the sidewalk. Buildings with parapets, for instance, so that it may be a flat roof building, but you don't think about that when you walk by because it's got a parapet that has the old lettering on it. The bank has that older character to it. Once, when I first came on the Planning Commission, there was a document, and I can't find it anymore. And there was a study of recommended architecture for the downtown area, and it was essentially, it was relating to kind of 30s feel. I don't think we want to tell everybody fruit shed is the only thing we want. That really, we've taken an industrial use and used it places. I guess maybe some kind of historic atmosphere is what we're looking for. Maybe other people can fill in some more things that they think of.
Okay, I see Ramona's hands up.
Hi, yeah, can I jump in on that? So how about something like maintain and enhance the historic character of Loomis's Town Center, or whatever we're going to refer to it as, downtown core. I don't know what we've chosen to refer to it as, but to maintain and enhance the historic character of the Loomis's Town Center.
Not to be annoying, but I'm going to be annoying. It's going to be a role. That doesn't tell me anything. What you say is pedestrian-oriented, street-fronted buildings, single story or whatever the height limit needs to be in order to meet that type of thing. Those things I can measure and force a developer to look at. But historic character, you've had historic gas stations in the town core. You've got sort of, depending on where you are in that area, you have different building styles that you may or may not want replicated. I'm fine if the town wants to replicate it. I'm just not certain that gives us enough specificity. So if you could maybe elaborate a little more on what you mean by historic, I'd be cool. We can make some.
Sure. I'd have to kind of think about what characteristics, architectural characteristics, or, or that the buildings are up to the sidewalk. So I guess if we kind of decide what we consider to be the historic character, or what I consider to be the historic character of it, would be choice of materials. There's brick, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. But yeah, that the buildings are, along the sidewalk or right off the sidewalk. I forget what you call that. Anyway, and then, yeah, because that's why I was trying to use the word enhance, because yeah, some of those buildings are definitely not what we would like to replicate. It's one thing to have pizza factory or something in there, but it's not something that I would like to encourage more of. I'd like to encourage more of things that are, of obviously the historic buildings, horseshoe bar, grill. Even LBB does a fine enough job since they've, put in that kind of covered seating and stuff. They've done a great job to enhance that more historic feel for a building that is not. So I guess, not sure in at this point in planning and architecture words, not to get too wordy, what we would like to put in there.
What if we reference the 2010 Town Center Master Plan that had design concepts in it?
That was never adopted, correct, Christy?
No, I believe it was.
Oh, was it? So that is.
Yeah, resolution 10-23 in July 7th of 2010.
But I thought we were trying to get rid of all these different documents in the new general plan, and not, to what extent are we keeping these as reference points?
Yeah, you're right, Gene. We would like to do part of that. Is one of the implementation measures is to develop design standards or develop and adopt design standards for the town, including the downtown. And that could actually be a point that we kick off from. And Andreas, I'm going to ask for your help there. How do we do that, but not make it?
I think the implementation measure would be to develop the design guidelines by referring, by looking to the work that had been done in the 2010 Town Center Master Plan.
Okay.
And based on what we write here, I'll be able to say whether or not we're running a risk of making it look like we're incorporating the 2010 Town Center Master Plan.
Okay.
Greg? Oh, sorry. Greg Abranovich?
Okay, there. I think I just unmuted. Yeah, what I wanted, can you hear me okay now?
Yes, sir.
Great, thank you. I want to throw out a different thought, an idea. We're going on a lot about, design guidelines and what we want the town to look like. We keep going over themes such as, the fruit shed, and Gene brought up, things about maybe the 30s, and we have certain concepts in mind. And I'm just wondering if we aren't limiting ourselves to the point where we're excluding, innovative ideas. Like somebody might want to come in with a nice restaurant, and they might want to have like a Tuscany design. Maybe a Greek restaurant might want to have a Greek design. Is there some way we can throw out a statement that we're open to different innovative suggestions that would fit into the character of the town somehow? Do you get my point?
We do, yeah, we do, Greg. Yeah, because sometimes you could do a structure that not mimics, and it doesn't replicate, but it acknowledges those past styles. And generally that's something you would actually write in your design standards, not so much in a general plan.
Okay. Yeah, I think we don't want to write this in such a way that it would discourage other concepts.
Yeah.
This is Sean. What about just saying something like maintain and enhance the downtown area through design standards or probably design guidelines, not standards, but maintain and enhance the downtown area through design guidelines, and leave that as a policy that those design guidelines are going to be established. And then we can refer back to and use the 2010 downtown master plan, but not reference it directly.
The implementation measure, I think, like Andrea said, could reference that as a starting point. And I think that would be appropriate.
We definitely don't want it in the goals or in the policies. I think we definitely just want it mentioned in the implementation measure, but we don't want it as high up as in the goal.
Right. Because if you look downtown, our downtown's not necessarily historic. We have, the Bank of America building is not historic, and,
Right.
I think it'd be hard pressed to say it's historic, and referencing a particular time or a decade doesn't really fit in either. But I think that you can craft design guidelines that sort of protect the quality that we know makes Loomis Loomis, and it's a little bit hard to put our finger on it right now because we're trying to write a big, our overarching goal instead of,
Mm-hmm. Does that wording work, Sean? Does that get what you're talking about?
I think after guidelines, you need to say reflecting the unique character of the town of Loomis or something like that.
Yeah, I think I think Andy's right.
All right.
And then we can figure out what that character is when we're doing the design guidelines.
It's a little bit like pornography, like the Supreme Court said, right? Like you know it when you see it, but they try to not give a specific definition.
Really for that. Yes. Like, okay. If that works, Russ has his hand up, Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Russ.
I'm with you on how we want to identify this. However, as I look at Mel Chevrolet, we would never allow one of those in town. You wouldn't allow something like that in town. And that was part of the rural character of Loomis at one time. So I think we need to recognize that we are moving forward and we have made some changes, and we need to make some changes in the future to meet the town character that we're talking about, which we have real trouble identifying.
Well, if it pleases the committee, and that's an excellent. If it pleases the committee, let's talk a little bit about where that might apply. Our charge as a subcommittee is to look at all of this. But in my mind, when you're talking downtown, I don't think of all of this as your downtown. I think of a small subset of this area as being your downtown. And maybe, just maybe, it's okay to have different design guidelines that apply out here and out here and down here than you would have right here. And maybe you want different uses in those areas or in different kinds of buildings, and maybe it would be appropriate to have an auto dealer or not. I mean, I drive a 67 Le Mans, and I'd love to have a classic auto dealer near downtown. I think it'd be cool, especially if the cars went back to the 20s and 30s. I'd go just to look at the cars. But you know, maybe that was, maybe it doesn't, but maybe it's the design of the use that would be the most sense. Regardless, my thought was, for a goal like this, we're really talking about the design guidelines differentiating about where you are, and as opposed to townwide.
Yeah, in Cedar Creek, when Mary Beth and I were there, and Andy is there now, but Cedar Creek has design standards that are different if you're in the downtown core versus the you know, just maybe 2 or 3 blocks off, but they're standards that apply to the downtown area in varying degrees. I think that's important to recognize that, you know, going out towards the old Homewood or something, that, you know, maybe we should be a little bit more flexible with those standards or those guidelines as opposed to being directly downtown here.
You know, I don't know if that helps or hinders, Russ, but that was my thinking on this, that the design guidelines would be flexible to allow you to put different uses in different places.
Looks like Ramona's hand's up.
I just wanted to comment that, yeah, I agree that, you know, most people, when you think of downtown, you think of really the more historic core, and no, there are buildings that aren't in there, like the US Bank building and things. But to me, the design standards in that very core area of a few blocks would be much more tight to, you know, nodding towards historic architecture or things that would complement or blend better, and, you know, maybe be they may not be historic, but kind of like Loomis Basin Brewery did. They definitely, their choice of materials transformed that building into something that definitely enhanced the historic kind of feel of that downtown street corner. But yeah, then as you go out farther, yeah, because our purview goes out along Taylor Road, that obviously the farther out from that you go, you could be more flexible, but still have design guidelines that, you know, would lend towards a good transition into the, you know, in and out of the downtown area, so that you don't have anything that is very out of character or super out of character of what you'd find in a you know, a smaller main street town like we have. I wouldn't necessarily international architecture building, you know, like down, you know, design guidelines that would be, you know, strictly, you know, kind of prohibiting things that are, you know, international architectural style with types of, or, you know, William Jessup kind of looks of a building.
Thank you, Ramona. I know that we, in the land use general we were talking specifically about this area and about design guidelines and how important it is. And I see Jean's hands up.
Do I need to unmute?
No, we can hear you.
Okay. I think that's a very good point. And I'm looking at the map here, and basically I think we all know as you get down Taylor further, I suppose, basically as you get Circle Drive in the GC instead of the town center, the character of the most of those places along there changes because they're newer. And so you're right, one size does not fit all if we're talking about our entire area here. So that does need to be taken into consideration.
So Mark, how do we add, or what is the?
Well, if this works for the subcommittee, we can move on to the next one.
Well, how about, Mark, first of all, I'm just wondering, it says the goals of the town of Loomis Town Center. In reality, aren't we really talking about the Taylor Road Horseshoe Bar business corridor? And then you could have maintain and enhance the business corridor pursuant to adopt design guidelines reflecting the unique characteristics along the corridor, or something like that. And I think that would allow us then in the design standards to have those varying standards and recognize it's a whole corridor that we're looking at.
So right here, you would change this for the Taylor, oops, maybe I can type. Taylor Road.
Horseshoe Bar.
Horseshoe Bar Road.
What does that cover?
That would be your entire project area, your project area that we're looking at.
Everything. Okay.
Yeah.
And we would have a map.
Yeah.
One of the things that the current general plan does is there's a lot of narrative in there about where things are. I'd rather just point to a map. This policy set covers this area on this map. It's just easier that way.
And maybe one of the things at some point I would like to look at is whether this should be, if this is going to be the downtown, should the Horseshoe Bar Road corridor go beyond and further out to the freeway, because we have businesses out there too. And presumably within the next 20 years, a lot of those places along Horseshoe Bar could be developed commercially or some other, maybe some residential or mixed use or something. And for instance, there's a parcel next to the sheriff's office. Something will go in there. Some of these places along Horseshoe Bar that are now either some small business, but who knows what somebody might want to do within the next 20 years. I guess I keep wondering, why is that aspect of the business area not included? Want to have these our commercial areas there looked at more together. For instance, I don't really understand why the land behind Rayleigh's is looking at the Vinyl Perkins and the Johnson properties, or why this group isn't looking at those as well, because to me they sort of fit with the commercial areas more than they do with the subdivision that's going to likely be behind them. That's just a suggestion. Maybe it's not the right place to discuss it, but
no, it's the right
I'd like
place.
that looked at.
Well, with the change that we made to that discussion of corridor, and with the ability to kind of reflect design standards in various locations within that corridor, is very appropriate. The one thing I think what is commonly known as Turtle Island on the other side of the freeway may have a separate set of design standards in the future, but at least taking Horseshoe Bar down to the freeway interchange. And again, if we have a map to show where that is, I think we have the ability then to create different design standards, for those areas, because that's appropriate.
This is Sean. I agree 100% that Horseshoe Bar needs to have some sort of design guideline standards or whatever put on it, because it's the main entrance into town. Come off the freeway, and we need to be able to protect what those, what that corridor looks like when you're coming into the downtown area. I don't think it's appropriate to have it, go to Rayleigh's and have Rayleigh's have to remodel whatever, or have it go across the freeway to Turtle Island. But I think it is appropriate for it to be along the Horseshoe Bar corridor as well. I think that's very important, actually.
Many communities also have a goal or a policy or objective to put in a entry statements, to have a specific design for, they often call them gateways or entry into town, so that you've transitioned from wherever you were to a special place. I don't know if the subcommittee would be interested in a goal or policy like that. But that would speak to what you've just said, Sean, which is, look, when you come off the freeway, you need to know you've arrived at someplace special. And that would be one way of doing it.
Yep. Yeah, 100%.
Like that.
There's
Yeah.
that whole big parcel across from Rayleigh's that's next to the sheriff's office. It's empty, right? Well, there is one building up there, but if that were redeveloped, we would want to be looking carefully at that and what it said about our town when you come in. That's what you see.
Yeah, I agree with what, Sean and Mark, that, the gateways, I would want to do something policy-wise or design standard-wise for our gateways and call them out. And I would take it all the way to include Turtle Island, because you do see it when you get off the highway, but you also see it as you are on the highway, traveling for people, traveling through Loomis. Like, so you don't want it to, you want to be very, protective of what the impression people have as they approach your town along the highway as well, if you ask me. So that, the image starts as you even approach the Horseshoe Bar interchange.
Yeah, I think that's right, but I think it's a different set, right, Ramona? Like, you don't have the same guidelines for Horseshoe Bar as you would have over across the freeway. So that's the idea of ringing out from downtown and having something specific for downtown, and it's a little bit different as you go out and kind of expand out from the downtown core. I think that's the idea.
Correct. Yeah, I would see the downtown core being, the most strict, if you want to call it that, in some senses of, but of having less interpretation, I guess, on what designs people can put, that we're looking for versus as you go further out. Yeah. But you would still have to have, some standards that would guide designs to be complementary and consistent with the image that you're wanting your town to portray. Because let's just face it, the point that we are trying to do with the Loomis, I think, for its economic viability, is to portray its small town image, because that helps, I think, as your one of your key economic development goals. And so, what people see obviously can determine how your image is, obviously. So, to me, to include Turtle Island in on that, to me, is very important as that goes.
I can see that would need a set of guidelines, but I'm not sure that I think maybe the place to put that is with the Southeast, with that subcommittee, and have them recommend putting something.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it doesn't quite fit with this. I can see that things need to be correlated, but I'm not sure that whatever goes in there, I don't want to see just another take a shopping center and from, general design and plop it here in Loomis. That doesn't fit what we really want there. But I'm not sure whatever we come up with for the downtown part is necessarily appropriate for Turtle Island.
True, yeah. I mean, and yeah, since I'm on different committees, it's hard to always separate out.
Two things, if I might. The first is that any designer is going to tell you that they can do everything from modern to historic in the same design guidelines. And what they do for towns and cities to keep them all consistent is they have unifying themes. And that can be anything from types of landscaping to signage to colors to fonts, all sorts of things that don't necessarily mean that they all look the same. And the second thing is we are deep into the weeds here. And this is something we should probably, if the subcommittee is okay with number one, and if there's any additional notes I need to add for implementation, I can certainly do that. But we're way into the weeds.
Well, if I may, I do want to go back to Jean's point, and that is at the very top, the goal of the town of Loomis and this Taylor Road and Horseshoe Bar Road corridor. I think what she's saying, it should include all the way to the freeway. And so is there a way that perhaps we can change that goal to incorporate more area in this as it develops, or how, I think that she made a really valid point, and I'd like to follow up on that.
Jen, looking at this, it just says the Horseshoe Bar corridor, so there's no limit to it. So I think as we develop the guidelines, we can have that discussion and again, map where these various locations are within the guidelines.
Okay, good, okay.
I think this is broad enough to do that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, someplace it does say that it includes Horseshoe Bar too, but not including Library Drive. So that's why, wherever that is, we might need to look at changing that.
Right. Yeah, I agree. The other thing that comes to mind is I believe we have a Southeast Horseshoe Committee meeting next week.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't hurt to bring this up then. Lucy, would you make a note and we'll bring it up with the subcommittee? Please. I guess I could be polite. Okay. Do we need to make any other edits here, Chair?
Everybody okay with the first goal and then number one? I think nobody in the public had their hand raised, did they? Okay, let's go on then.
And then I'm going to take this text here because I thought it was a good discussion, and I'll put it down in implementation. Yeah. I just don't want to lose it, but that's why it's still there. Okay, this next one is promote the economic stability of the town. Planners delicately consider these throwaway goals because they don't really do anything. Of course, you're going to promote the economic stability of your town. If there's something specific, then we should certainly discuss that. Otherwise, it can be just moved to the economic development finance element and move on.
And actually, it's in there already. We can cross-reference it. Yes, we do have that in the economic financial element.
Does anybody disagree with that? Okay.
Okay, so this next one here is interesting to me, particularly given some of the comments we received over the last few months that are kind of all over the map. There seemed to be an idea that maybe the restaurants downtown should just be for residents. I didn't hear from any restaurant owners in that regard, so I'm not sure if that's just people wanting to get in and do their thing. If the idea here is that we're going to encourage different goods and services in different areas, then certainly that's a good goal. But as it's written now, it just says provide goods and services. So in other words, it's another one of those things that's pretty generic. Is there something that the committee would like to do here?
Ramona has her hand up.
Ramona, you're muted, so you can unmute.
Sorry. The first question I have is it, even relevant? I mean, is it just kind of a fluffy goal statement, kind of like promote economic stability? I mean, wouldn't most town centers want to provide goods and services? And then I guess if we do feel that it needs to stay, I would open that up to also include visitors. I mean, you don't want to just seem exclusive to just focusing on goods and services for your residents. I mean, you'd want to welcome visitors as well as we already do. Many of the people attending those restaurants and other things and the Eggplant Festival are all visitors as well as residents.
Anybody else have a comment on that?
Am I still on, Jean?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I think part of this goes back to an old and out having outsiders come into our downtown, and we want to just have, so some people felt like keep our downtown just for us and keep the traffic down. We don't want a lot of outsiders coming in. On the other hand, other people felt and hey, we need all the business we can get. So I don't know if we still need that.
Okay, Maureen Valley has her hand up.
Yeah, I think that we should encourage outside people to come into the town for the benefit of the profitability of the town, and I think it could be really a destination. Right now, it's not, but I think it could and should be.
Okay. Anybody else? Mary Beth, is that somebody? Okay. So it sounds like most of us are okay with taking that out, sounds like.
Right. So the next one is Revitalize Taylor Road. I have no idea what that means.
Which we kind of did with the facade improvements and sidewalks, and certainly that was a goal that I feel was achieved in a lot of sense. I mean, it's not finished yet, but it was obviously important to have that out there. I mean,
Is there
Taylor
still
Road.
money?
Pardon me, Maureen?
Is there still money for facade upgrades?
No. Ramona has her hand up.
So I guess the one question I have is does this kind of fold into our first goal, which is maintain and enhance the downtown? It kind of seems to be almost a statement that could be covered by our first statement. You know, vitalizing seems to be something that is kind of, you know, more akin to that it's derelict and you're going to revitalize it. I can't really say that our downtown Loomis is derelict. You know, because revitalizing kind of connotates that. So I think it's just, that's my opinion on it.
It may depend on what part of Taylor Road you're looking at too. We had the two sections from those two master plans and got money. First, we did that one section. Now the second section is up to the school or up to King Road. I don't know if we might want to look at something further down going towards Sierra College. Do we want to do anything to make that better? Maybe we need to rephrase this, since I think the job is partly done, or at least on one section is pretty much done.
So what you're saying, Jean, is this section and our purview does go all the way down to Sierra College.
I think that this might be usurped by this revision that the subcommittee did.
I'm sorry, what was that?
One of the committee members suggested that perhaps this is redundant with how we reworded number one. And I'm just wondering if
I think so. Number one is very broad, and I think we can do that. Budgets can be placed because of that. Number one, budgets can be in there for improving the roadway, enhancements, whatever. So I think number one really does cover that.
Okay. Does anybody disagree with that? Maureen has her hand up.
Yeah, I agree that we should pay more attention to the area, say from the hardware store all the way down to Sierra College Boulevard. Before I participated on these committees, I always thought the heart of the town was High Hand, and I know people here don't think that, but that is a massive place. And I mean, it takes 2 weeks to get reservations there. So people that come to there, you know, it'd be nice to have the surrounding area to the, what's that, to the west of High Hand developed in some fashion.
I think the one that we put about design guidelines, when I read that, I think more of businesses and architecture and that kind of thing. But a lot of revitalizing Taylor Road actually had to do with all the streets and sidewalks and landscape, all the things that we got the big grants to do, which don't exactly go under what I normally would think of for design guidelines. Is there a way that we can reflect that we still want that kind of infrastructure, not just the businesses and buildings, but we want that infrastructure continued, I think.
Yeah.
How about that?
That's good.
Yep, that's great.
Okay.
And to my mind, Gene, that would cover everything from specialized paving to streetlights to whatever you want to put in the public realm. Trash cans, benches, gazebos, all of those things would be a public improvement. Okay.
Okay.
Although, Christy, do we have this in our glossary?
The word public improvements?
Yes.
Or,
yes,
let me check.
public improvements. If not, we should probably add it.
Okay.
Or public, you call it public facilities. That's what we tend to call it. We call sidewalks facilities.
You got it.
That's better.
Splendid. And that means if I do that, should this go away?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, so this next one here is protect Loomis's natural resources. This is covered in numerous other places in your general plan. I don't know that it's necessarily a town core goal, because if ever there's a place where some of those resources might not be protected because we need to do something different. But regardless, this is already covered elsewhere in your plan. And the recommendation is have it done there and not do it here.
Does anybody disagree with that? Okay.
Okay, so this one here is the Civic Center. I know this is a big topic in town. And then the question here is the intent to create one in the town core specifically, or just near the core? How do you want to address this? Because this is also a policy in the Northeast Subcommittee purview.
Correct.
The area behind the library in particular. Not that
Hey,
it can't-
Russ. Oh, sorry. I was just going to check in with Russ to see if the Blue Goose is really what that goal was reflecting when they renovated that. If he's still on.
Oh, he might be.
He's on.
Oh, he might be getting his tri-tip.
No, he's there. He just needs to unmute himself.
Okay.
So Jean, when they made this goal, do you think that by renovating Blue Goose, that was what they had in mind?
No, I think what they had in mind was that the town was going to build its town hall somewhere in the area behind the library, that back there, someplace in that area. The town hall would be built there, and a civic center, meaning if we were going to have community center and whatever park, whatever else we were going to have around it. Then it turned out that they ended, because nothing was happening back there. They went to the sewer district office became available, and they moved town hall to that building instead. And kind of that whole civic center concept ended up getting dropped at the time because of nothing was happening back there, and the town offices needed to move. They were outgrowing where they were, and so they went to where was available. But no, it had nothing to do with the Blue Goose. It had to do with creating a civic center in a broader sense, someplace back there around or near behind the library.
Thank you.
Hey, this is Russ Kelly. The Blue Goose was partially created to be a nonprofit community center. It started out with some ideas back in Iowa, someplace where a small town put in a civic center that people could go to and enjoy the things that they did there, and they financed it themselves. In this particular case, it was a nonprofit organization that funded all of that through different mechanisms and has been very influential in obtaining money for the high school football fields, for the swimming pools. Almost every fundraiser in town has gone to the Blue Goose. And it stays booked up for events that people like the character of the goose. They like the atmosphere that it creates. And we've modified, made changes to the Blue Goose to enhance all that, including have operations there on a regular basis. That was one of the main things that we found that we needed to have while we were doing the Blue Goose. We didn't want a building sitting there without public use every single day. And that's why those activities that are going on there are very good for the Blue Goose and good for the community. And I think that I was on the board from the time we started, and it was intended to be a nonprofit community center. For us to be going and putting a community center, I think would be a great idea. I think there's some activities that could be for that, but I don't personally see where the town has that kind of money where they can finance a community center in millions of dollars and still have it active on a regular basis and productive. So, my thing is the Blue Goose does that. I'm not saying it does everything we need, but I think it fulfills the need and the rural character of the town.
Well, and then the South Placer Heritage Foundation was formed to save the building, right? Because it was going to be torn down by UP. Is that right, Ed?
Yeah.
No?
Yes, that's true. We bought the building for $1. We bought the
Right.
depot for $1, and we bought the Blue Anchor building. Unfortunately,
And the
yeah.
town bought the properties and said it, so the town owns the properties, but the buildings are owned by the foundation.
That's correct.
I think the idea of building a civic center is important. I don't think that it would be, I certainly don't think it would be at the Blue Goose, but the idea of doing something now that we have actually we have control of the library property. It's the town's property now. It's been recorded and all that is done. So the idea of building a civic center where the library is or somewhere around there, I think is really important, because frankly, the town hall building that we're in now, we're about out of room there now too. And so if we, hire, literally, if we get one more person, I don't know where we're going to put them.
Well, one of the things to think about is right now the business corridor, the Taylor Road corridor has the Blue Goose, it has the depot, it has the Blue Anchor Park, it has the library, since we said that's along Horseshoe Bar. So it really is providing for a number of civic areas. And then Sean, if the town is going to be looking for a new place for a town hall and further activity, so in some ways and I'm not thinking how to say that, but somehow reflect that this corridor is the place to put these civic facilities, but there's a number of locations. It's not just one.
Yeah, but I wouldn't say that the Blue Goose is a civic building, because it's not. The town owns the parking lot and the property underneath it, and the foundation rents it out. So it's not a civic building. I wouldn't call it a civic building at all.
Okay, so I recommended some text changes here based on the conversation. Maintain and enhance the Blue Goose and Blue Acre Park as a center for community activity, which is great and nebulous at the same time.
Well, the library needs to go in there also.
It's not in our scope. Andy, outside
Oh, we
the
just-
map area.
We just talked about expanding it down there, so that.
Okay.
Now-
All joking aside, Andy, do you want, I mean, does the committee want me to add something about the library? We can just make that new. I don't.
Yeah, we should. I think that the library should be included in there, but I don't think that you can say maintain and enhance the Blue Goose because the town has no mechanism to maintain or enhance it because we don't own the property. We own the underlying property, but we don't own the building.
How about support?
That makes sense. I would say that makes sense.
Okay.
And I agree with the things that Russ has said about that the Blue Goose does, but I really don't think that either of these things are getting it to what we're talking about with a civic center.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, when I think of Civic Center, I think of an area in a city that's got, the town hall, city hall building. It's probably got some sort of a park around it and probably a library or some sort of a concentration of governmental buildings, plus, amenities for folks to enjoy.
Okay.
So I really think like the library would be a civic. That's where I would think that we would do a civic center. I would hate, frankly, to take up somewhere downtown when we've got this viable commercial district and end up plunking down a bigger town hall. That doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Okay, so support the creation of a civic center. Do you want to say in the vicinity of or near the library? How do you want to phrase this?
I'd say in the vicinity of.
So I think what's throwing me is that, if we go back and look at the land use designations, the library is part of the town center corridor, but we've kind of changed the subcommittees to where it's in a different section. It's with the behind Rayleigh's part. But land use designation, it still is TC.
Yeah, we can do that as this committee. My recommendation is this committee makes that recommendation and then we inform
This is library.
Then we inform the land use committee that, hey, this is what our recommendation is, that we should look at this as part of that business corridor.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with including it here or whatever. And then when we pull everything together in front of the full committee, we may end up reshuffling where some of the goals go. There may be some redundancy. We just need, while we're having the thought process, let's put it on paper and then we'll worry about it when we're going to actually pull in the full document together. And if we have the same policy in 2 or 3 committees, so be it. And then we just finalize it in the final edit before the commission and council. So
Is number 6 actually a goal or is it more like a policy or implementation or something?
You are way ahead of me, Gene. I'm still up at number 4. Does this work for the subcommittee? For the creation of a civic center, even though that's not defined, I think we'll leave it vague.
I have a couple of hands raised on this topic before we move on.
I guess the question I have is, do we really want to call it a civic center? Or, maybe more like a community center? I mean, I know if you're interested in building another town hall, then it would become much more civic if it's adjacent to the library or in that same vicinity, but we still also have the train depot, which is civically used. So, which would be obviously disconnect from a town hall. So I guess how do we grapple with that kind of our civic buildings are not in a central or generalized location with adjacency to each other, it's just kind of the way
I think perfect world, it would be a new town hall that's built with a big enough facility that you could have the council chambers at town hall and everything there. And then the train depot would basically turn into a de facto community center, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not that comes out and we actually have the ability to do that is another thing. But there's property around the library that the county owns, the memorial hall, and I'm not going to pick a fight with the vets because I'll not win that one for sure. But that property, if that ever came up for sale, the Johnson property, if that ever came up for sale, you have the what it was called the Civic Park behind the library. That's the general plan now is PI, or zoning is PI or whatever it is, but that can't be used for anything other than a park area, there's property around there that we could use to create a cool civic center area for the town.
Oh, okay, there's enough property. Okay, and yeah,
I-
Memorial Hall is there too, which it sounds like the county is wanting to make some movement on what they do with those memorial halls across the whole county, if you're not aware.
Yeah, I believe I'm unmuted. Could I?
No, we can
You're
hear you.
unmuted.
Okay. If I can jump in, I got a comment I've been itching to get in. Sean kind of beat me to it a little bit on my thought. And he suggested the Veterans Hall, the Memorial Hall, as a site for a civic center. And I don't know, like Sean suggested, maybe we're stepping on some toes here. But I think that when I drive by, that just generally seems to be an underutilized building. I don't see a lot of activity. There are some very important activities that do go on, but not a lot. And I think that'd be an excellent location should that property ever become available for a civic center. Anyway, that's my comment. Thank you.
I would hope that you guys are interested in retaining the actual building itself. It's a pretty cool historic building rather than leveling it. So that's my.
You know, I happen to be the chairman of the Memorial Hall Board, and
Oh,
in trouble, Sean, run.
okay, fire away, Russ.
Oh, shots fired.
Anyway,
I did say I'm not going to pick a fight with the vets for sure, because that's one I'll lose.
you know, I agree with the Civic Center, maybe over by the library or someplace. I have no reservations about that, but I do have reservations about Memorial Hall because it was put there for the veterans and for the community, and it's used by a ton of people. The Boy Scouts use it, the FFA uses it, 4-H uses it. Everybody uses that hall. We just went through the calendar for next year. And matter of fact, you can go online to the county, look at Loomis Memorial Hall, and you'll see how much it's actually used. So I would hate to lose the Memorial Hall because it's definitely part of the character and rural community Loomis.
Okay, I stand corrected. Thank you.
Okay, kind of ushering us back onto track here. Since we're not picking on the veterans, and the wording says, support the creation of a civic center in the vicinity of the town library. Is that specific and generic enough to get us through?
I also like Ramona's suggestion of community center only because it is the Loomis Library and Community Learning Center, so it just kind of ties in.
So change civic to community? Is that?
Well, that civic center implies, I think, a little more about also incorporating government. Community center probably doesn't. It kind of says more something like recreational activities, classes, those kinds of things. I would leave it as civic center, which could include both.
I'd say and community and civic center. Because again, the library is kind of already
Okay, if we're going to have both.
performing a community service, but if there's, I think there was some discussion of expanding to some degree the library to include more community room type uses. So
How about that? Support the creation of community and civic center in the vicinity of the town library.
I like it.
Okay.
And
Sounds
then
good to me.
go ahead, Russ. Oh, okay. So, but because this is sort of out of our purview, is this something we're recommending to that? Not necessarily a goal of ours?
I believe that committee is done. So I think it's important that we leave it here.
Okay.
And
This
let-
will just go on to the full committee, right?
Correct.
General
Correct.
committee.
So maybe we could make a note to make sure that we understand it's out of our purview area, but this is something we're recommending to the the umbrella land use committee.
I can certainly make that note. I don't know. Okay.
kind of fits with our recommendation to expand the planning area to the freeway.
Okay, I think we already talked about supporting the Blue Goose and Blue Anchor Park. Is that worded correctly, or have I butchered what those are called?
That's the one that I ask, is this really a goal? Or is it more some kind of policy or implementation? It's really one of the goals of the area?
It could be a policy. You're absolutely right, Jean. I mean, if I were to do it, I would say something like continue to support. But honestly, that too is a policy. This would not be, I mean, it's there. You're not going to give up on it. So now it just kind of falls into normal maintenance and route two.
So might the goal be that we're trying to create and support gathering places for community residents and visitors?
Ooh,
Being a little more generic.
I like that.
So you want to say that slowly so I can type it?
What'd I say again? Two, I guess, to support and create gathering places for community residents and visitors.
I like that.
Yeah, that's good.
And that actually becomes a policy under that goal. Yeah.
What becomes a policy? What I just deleted, Andy?
Yeah, that does become a policy under that goal when we have that.
Should have had that thought before I deleted it, Andy.
All right, you were fast.
Yeah, for once in my life. Okay.
Do we want to create and support rather than support and create? Just
okay. Not to get the cart before the horse, and Jean. Where were you when I was learning English?
I hear ya.
Create and support gathering places for community residents and visitors. And then I'll put this, whoa, what happened? Stop it. Oh, I know what I did. I will put this in the policies. Yeah. Move to policies. Okay. And this would be support, continue to support. Perfect. Excellent idea. All right. Number 6. That's what's in the plan now. It's generic. Nobody had any real issues with it when they reviewed it. I don't see any reason to change it, but what does the committee think? Thoughts?
I don't hear any, so let's move on to 7.
Similar, develop and maintain downtown Loomis. And see down here we call it downtown. Up here it's called town center. Then we have other places call it town core. We're going to have to nail that flat and decide as a subcommittee what we want to call it. But develop and maintain downtown Loomis as a focal point for shopping and services. It's another one of those economic development.
Seems redundant to me.
That's,
I mean,
to me, but
anybody have a thought? Should we take it out?
I'm wondering if, again, the intent is kind of to define it as a place where you live, work, and play and shop.
no, it doesn't.
what
say
is the point of saying that?
The way it's
sort of
worded, it
seems
doesn't
self-evident.
say that. The way it's worded just says to go get your hair cut and buy a milkshake.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant 6 and 7 together.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Bonnie, could you repeat what you said?
Provide a place
Hang on.
where people can live, work, play, and shop.
Yeah.
Provide places.
Yeah, places would be appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a fine goal, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I do too.
I like that.
Yeah. Excellent.
So we get rid of this one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think I liked having the range part, though, of employment and housing opportunities one of the things that we're going to have to be looking at is, are we putting in housing, a range of housing opportunities? And like it or not, we're going to have to probably be looking at that more seriously for this area in general.
Mark,
like
would that be better as a policy about the range or as a goal? And I'm kind of debating in my own head on that one.
I think you make a statement if it's in a goal that you're not just going to have one type of thing.
Right.
But I could certainly sit here and discuss it either way with you for a while. But I don't mind. Does that work, Gene? The way I have that written, provide.
Take out employment and housing. That's redundant with the work and live part later in this sentence. But a range of places where people can live, work, etc.
Well, I don't know what a range means in that context, but honestly, I think it's fine the way it is. That sometimes when you're putting goals together, it's okay to be a little squishy. That gives the town flexibility later on. We can get specific in the policies and implementation.
Correct.
Okay.
I guess I understand, and it's, what Bonnie said sounds really nice, but to me, it doesn't speak as strongly as provide a range of employment and housing opportunities. One says, hey, we take this a little bit seriously. We want different. The other one sounds like we want to be a nice place to be.
What if we put diverse?
I don't know. Maybe it isn't going to matter.
I dislike the word diverse because it's been hijacked by a whole different discussion.
Yeah.
Let's see.
That subject.
How about
one of the things we do, we could use mix.
Variety.
Oh, that's a good idea.
And to Jean's point, would we then maybe nail down in the policies more specificity about what we're trying to achieve?
That's my thought. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, that sounds good to do that.
Is this okay here then?
As a goal, I think that's a good one, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I see. Yeah. I mean, I understand Jean's point because it's kind of a phrase that people say a lot where people can live, work, and play. So it is kind of squishy in that sense. It's, but if we can better define it for housing and employment and like recreation or something like that, I see Jean's point. It's a little less formal of a statement than making more formal statements referring to housing, employment, and recreation. If I think, is that what you're kind of hitting at, Jean? Is it's just kind of a,
yeah, it just one of them says it more strongly, I think, than more directly than the other one, but that's okay if we can include it somewhere. If it goes into the policies, then that'll probably work.
Not to belabor the point, but would it be better to say to provide a variety of opportunities where people can to the places?
Sure.
Ooh, I don't feel strongly either way. Just it's down here. It's down here, and so I was wondering if that would help. If it adds anything.
I kind of, Mark, I'm thinking that range of employment and housing opportunities could be a policy under that goal. Because I think that is a stronger statement, and it then becomes a policy of the town of Loomis to do this, and I think that's strong.
Got it. Makes sense.
Would you want to add recreational to that to kind of tie in with the above line?
Yeah.
Recreational, probably more than that too. If we want to do that, we also have to do something about that.
It would be economic. It would be.
If we say recreational, are we going to have people wanting to do recreational businesses more so than I mean, we're thinking like parks and that kind of thing, but are we going to have businesses that want to come in and put recreational things that aren't really what we had in mind?
It could be, but I would consider a brew pub both a shopping spot or a service and a recreation, because you'd go there maybe to listen to music. If that's anathema to the town, then we might want to refine that, but I would do that in my zoning code. However, it would make a fine policy if you wanted to refine it there. How about commercial? No takers?
That's okay.
That takes recreation out of it and puts it in a broader bucket of, a brew pub has to make money, but they're also doing entertainment. So it wouldn't be just that. Okay. Anybody have any grief with the way that's written as a policy?
Why can't we leave recreation in there?
We can. I just was
We
responding.
can.
I mean, if you're looking at it from an economic development standpoint, having people come downtown to do something fun and then also go to a shop while they're waiting or whatever, I think creating those kind of synergistic businesses and opportunities is important. Any reason for somebody to come downtown is a reason that they can walk by a shop and go in and buy something. Plus,
Well, do we
have a
want to
park.
put?
We have a
we
park
want
right
commer-
down there.
Commercial back in there, or
Yeah,
no?
put commercial.
Yeah,
back.
I would
Right.
put that back in. Yeah.
Also
Okay.
missing a verb on this. Up above on the A, we had a verb to go with our sub point.
Are you taking over Gene's space?
I know. English
space is
score
all-
score 1 to Andreas.
We have denied.
Andreas 1, Gene 1000.
And for implementation, Andy, I'd probably have something along the lines, modify the development code to
Correct.
include, right?
Yep.
Okay, last of these, if we're done with this, pardon me, is number 7. Redevelop rights of way to enhance Loomis's historic image. Help me out with.
Haven't we already done that? We had at the time, we had the land there, but it's now where the depot and the park, which was where the Blue Anchor burned down. We had all that land along there. We have part of that, but then we also do have the part below High Hand that's not developed. It's up, I guess, going to be for sale again.
Right, so
And
Talking
partly
about this
not
stuff
done,
here.
I guess.
so you have this area here.
So council authorized staff to release an RFP to sell that property to redevelop it. The proposals were due on Friday of this past week, and I'll be going into closed session with council at the October meeting to negotiate potential purchase of the property.
This piece here.
Yep. The old WW molding thing.
And how far down does the town property go, Sean?
All the way to the railroad fence.
All the way down to here,
Yep.
right here.
Right there where that fence is. Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
That is cool, Sean.
It'll be if it goes forward the way that what has been proposed, it'll be a huge economic driver for the town.
Cool.
I think.
I think it's cool. How big is the site?
I think 4 acres, 4.6, something like that.
I was
Okay.
going to say 4.18, but
Yeah,
Yeah.
somewhere around there.
Just an
Splitting
estimate,
hairs.
how Mary Beth?
Splitting hairs.
I was going to say 5.5. I'm just throwing a number out there.
Do we
Raffle offer.
do we need to do anything here in support of that?
You know, I will say this, though, the railroad has always posed issues with the town. And the fact is, the railroad just falls along our purview the whole way. And I know we're talking about shoring up and creating ways to communicate with the railroad better so that we have a better relationship with them. And not to mention the fact that Sierra College and Taylor Road intersection and the railroad is right there. And I really feel like that's going to become a really important part for us to be able to talk with the railroad about that intersection. So I think we should leave something in there, but not necessarily to enhance Loomis's historic image. I just feel like we need to keep the railroad as a point of making sure we have a relationship with them along this corridor.
I agree with that. And then there's also the note, I guess, that Mark wrote that you're right. You can't develop the right of way. It's the properties adjacent to the right of way. I don't think that saying redevelop the rights of way is really, I mean, we've done that for the most part, except for the WW molding. And by the time that, within, I don't know how long it's going to take, but sooner or later that'll get done. I think that Jan pointed out that we need to continue to kind of just stay focused on that is important. And I don't really know what the wording would be for that.
Well, what about some kind of cooperation with the Union Pacific Railroad? Yeah, not sure, but you're really talking a kind of a cooperation with the railroad to, maybe not enhance the Lewis historic image, but to
Basically, we're going to work with the railroad to ensure that improvements along their corridor are consistent with the needs of the town of Loomis.
I like that. There you go.
Great. I'll have to get it off the recordings. I don't think I can remember it.
I was thinking of maintain open communications with the railroad to ensure that improvements, blah, blah, blah.
What was that, Mary Beth? Maintain?
Maintain open communications with the railroad.
Yeah. In all the years I've been doing this, you don't really communicate with the railroad. You yell at them and hope they respond, right?
Sometimes.
What's interesting in that is there's a lot of correspondence with renters along the railroad right away in the ILT zone on Swetzer. And the people that know the people at the railroad, if somebody moves out, somebody else has already rented it. So once you get that person established that you can work with, it seems to go pretty smoothly. So I think we just need to establish that communication.
Yes, and
Personally.
it can be done, and they are actually good to work with once you get their attention. Okay, Chairman, if it pleases you, I would like to suggest two final actions. We'll work on the policies based on the edits up above and bring that back, but we have two decisions that would really be helpful in that. One is for us to decide what we're calling the town core, downtown, town center piece of our fair town. And the other is to be able to articulate where we want the boundary drawn for that so that we can refer to everything properly. The policies when the implementation measures will all change based on the discussion we had this afternoon. And then we can put all that in here and pull it off. But we haven't been able to get to, and I don't think we're going to be able to get to the proposed land use changes that have been requested and the other discussion that we need. But just
Right.
put that out there as an option.
Yeah, we also have, I think, only 20 minutes left, right? We're going to end at
Right.
5 today. So,
Is it more important that we look at the land use request? Is that more important than this core issue?
Well,
Is some discussion, I think.
we have some letters out to the owners, and I know that we're waiting to hear back from owners to perhaps attend the next meeting to help us go through those.
Okay.
Do we want to take the next 20 minutes and talk about what our area is going to be called, or do we want to just talk about the actual area itself?
And I'm sorry for the inconvenience, but I was hoping we could actually add one more goal, just because I think having history as part of the goal is important. And in terms of, what do I mean by that? With the library's partnering with the Historical Society, because we don't have a museum. I think that, maybe trying to build on that, something that taps into our history, where we can educate, where it can be a draw for visitors to come in from out of town, for even, folks who live here to learn more, just because I do think history is one thing that really resonates and unites a lot of community members here.
Maybe that should go under the very first one.
No, under 5. I'm thinking it becomes a new policy under create and support gathering places for community residents and visitors, and talk about one of those might be.
We could even do like support creation or support. Is there a town library or a town museum now?
No.
No.
Okay, so we could support the creation of a town museum.
Yeah.
Honoring the history.
I don't think you should say a town museum, because the implication is that it's going to be run by the town. So maybe you'd say support
Historical?
or just support creation of a museum honoring the town's historical. I don't know, however you want to word that, but I don't think we want to imply that the town's going to build it.
Right.
And we can wordsmith it.
Yeah.
Put support creation of rather than create.
Oh, yes.
Andreas, you didn't jump in before Gene.
He would have gotten back to it. Mark would have seen that.
You're giving me far too much credit, Gene, but thank you for that.
Mark was still tinkering, so I didn't want to jump in.
And then I think instead of saying historic importance of the town, you should probably maybe broaden it out to be the historic importance of the Loomis Basin, maybe.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Because it's not just the town, it's the whole,
true.
it's the whole basin. 2 O's in Loomis. Got it before Gene did.
Yeah. It's going to be a new drinking game.
I figure if it's underlined in red, Mark will notice it.
Yes. I'm a huge fan of words, autocorrect and change, and grammar too, by the way, Gene. Okay, so we've made great progress on that. I am stoked. We have goals. We have good ideas for both implementation and for policies. And I wasn't trying to short shrift the potential changes. It was just that we only have 15 minutes or so. And I was thinking in 15 minutes, we might be able to come to a consensus on what we want to call the downtown.
All right. So, okay, let's talk about that then. Because now it's called Town Center. Is that what it's called?
It depends on where in the document you look. Sometimes it's downtown, sometimes it's town center, sometimes it's town core. We just want one phrase to refer to what you understand to be. And ideally, is this okay? Do we want to move this down a little? What do we want to do there? That's second to what we want to call it. So let's figure out what we want to call it first, and then maybe have a small discussion on where you would like this line to be drawn, and we can modify that for the committee.
So what are the options? Town center, town core, downtown? Are those the options?
The floor is open. Right now, this land use designation is referred to in your piece as town center.
Okay.
I like town center.
Me too.
I think we should be careful on using the word core if we do it here, we need to somehow distinguish between when we talk about in general that the town's concept is a core concept where we have density in the center and getting less dense as you move away from the core. So that is a more nebulous phrase, and I think we really mean something more specific here, and just don't want to confuse those wherever we use whichever term.
Well, and to your point, and I just want to add to that, core also means sort of the central and most important part. And I feel like, that's not really, I don't know, I just feel like center takes that away. And I feel, that the town center is more representative of a vaster area. And I don't like the idea of core being an important, having to do with it being more important than one place or the other. So I like town center. How about Ramona?
I like to be a little more traditional in things, since it's a rather traditional town. How about we refer to it, keep the downtown word in there, because that is what people traditionally think of with an older city or town is it's you going downtown, because town center seems a little bit more modern to me in its connotation. I think we kind of want to keep the historic connotation.
Okay, anybody else have any thoughts? Russ Kelly.
I'm thinking that we keep talking about the historic part of the town and we don't seem to have a zoning for that. I mean, we don't have it here in the TC. And that's one of the most historic parts of our town. It's from that whole TC zone. And, whether we call it historic Loomis or Old Town Loomis or whatever, I think it needs to have something to designate. This is where most of the old town Loomis is.
So,
but we're including all the way up, way up and all the way down to Sierra in this, basically what's called on our map, the business corridor.
Well, I think the business corridor does include a large area. Now we're looking at this smaller area and defining it, because that term, downtown core, downtown, whatever, is used in a number of goals and policies. So I think we're trying to define that smaller area at this point.
So we're not defining our whole area that we're working on. We're defining only the TC area.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yes, I apologize if I wasn't clear. Just this area, however the committee ends up shaping it.
Okay, thank you.
Also, Ed Horton is here and he suggested, why don't we call it Old Town?
I like Old Town.
Old Town Loomis.
It's kind of a mix of old and new, though, within the same. I was thinking some kind of Highway 40 reference, but.
We could call it Historic Downtown, because that is mostly where the historic buildings are.
Would be good.
Historic downtown.
Includes the sheds.
Not to mess with the discussion, but if we change it to historic downtown, does that make that, do we want to change the land use designation too, so that it is reflective of that, which would change the acronym from TC to something else? Would that ruffle feathers or annoy folks?
I don't know. I think if you're looking at doing design guidelines, it'd be a differentiation for historic downtown versus the GC sections and things like that, but still keep it TC.
Yeah. From a planning perspective, I would prefer you not use the word historic unless you really mean it. I like old because it doesn't have any kind of other ramifications. In the planning world, when we use historic, there are all sorts of legal laws and whatnot that come to play. But just we'll have to. We
How
can
about for the sake of simplicity, just calling it downtown?
Ramona?
That's kind of thing got off on a tangent that I was following along too. And I kind of, I don't know, I like the old town of it to some degree, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe Andres's suggestion is to keep it simple and, you know, downtown is downtown. People know what a downtown is.
But if we're also trying to develop time, if in Horseshoe Bar, as a cohesive unit with this, in other words, basically we would have a T area that kind of should be working together, then we've kind of excluded the Horseshoe Bar and separated it off again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I go to Rayleigh's, I think I'm going downtown when I go to Rayleigh's.
I kind of like corridor, so downtown corridor, just because again, when I get off Horseshoe Bar and head that way, is exactly where I'm going to.
Would that also include Horseshoe Bar then?
I think I would like it to.
Mm-hmm.
Because that is the entry or gateway to downtown.
Are we looking at a name for an area? Are we looking at a name for a specific zoning, sorry, slip of the tongue, specific general plan district?
We've been
There are
trained.
several policies in your general plan that refer to something that happens specifically in the downtown, use a phrase, right? And they're referring to this area right here.
So I wouldn't use it as a land use designation. I think in the terms of the goals and policies, it is a term for a physical area within the community.
Well, let's go back to old downtown. I mean, that's where all the old areas are, and it's not historic. Mark doesn't like that word historic, so, and I think it's, I don't know, seems Loomis-ish to call it old.
So are we
downtown.
now we're excluding Horseshoe Bar area that we're recommending be included? Is that right?
I think that's a different conversation. What you're looking at is a design, say a downtown plan, which is one of the implementation measures that would encompass this entire area. You could call that the commercial core. You could call that the heart of Loomis. Any name can come up, and it can have different areas like neighborhoods, if you will. So you could have, what do you say, old downtown here, and then you could have Horseshoe Bar corridor. It almost doesn't matter at a certain level, except it would be helpful to have a way to refer to them as commercial neighborhoods. Andreas has hit it on head. Everyone's going to call it downtown regardless of what we do. So
Right.
but I don't want us to get high centered on connecting them. We can connect them in policy and design and all of those things. But if we have specific policies that deal with this area, and we just need to know what you want to call it.
Okay, so starting back at square one.
I'm still unclear because I thought we were dealing with the part, Mark, that's purple and TC, and now it looks like the area goes all the way up to the top and the bottom, the orange,
No.
the yellow. What are we looking at? What are we talking about here specifically?
We're talking about the TC area that's in pink, and then running down Horseshoe Bar to the freeway.
Okay, none
And
of the red.
the TCGC that is in that area. And then I kind of like Mark's ideas in the policies we can break out that, you have the old downtown, which is kind of the pink area right now. And then Sean, you kind of mentioned that area over by Rayleigh's is really kind of an entrance area to the town.
Mm-hmm. Gateway.
A gateway. So that could be the downtown gateway, and then you could have old downtown.
Thoughts, committee members? What do you think, Maureen?
I think old downtown sounds a little unwieldy. Old town, I think, is simpler and sounds better.
It sounds like we're trying to make it a tourist place, if that's what we mean.
Okay.
Old Loomis? I don't know, that's too broad.
Well, if you called the whole area down to the freeway downtown, then within policies and design policies, we could further define it as, if it's Old Town or whatever, along with the gateway area, we could further define that. But I think based on the policies I recall that we're referring to, that whole thing, if we called it downtown, it gives us the flexibility in the future to further refine it.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, like I said, when I go to Rayleigh's, I feel like I'm going downtown. So I would agree with that downtown, just that whole area, as long as it includes from the freeway in.
Yeah.
Anybody have who have we not heard from? Anybody in the public have anything they'd like to say? I see Jesse's out there. Are you there, Jesse?
Jesse, you're unmuted if you'd like to say anything.
Oh, he might not be available. So what do we think? Just calling it downtown? Does everybody like that?
I'm with downtown.
Downtown? Okay. Russ is in for downtown. I think Ramona suggested that. Does that sound good to you, Ramona?
Yeah, I'm fine with that, especially we can further kind of subdivide it to,
Okay.
Me personally, the Horseshoe Bar is more of a gateway, and it's not necessarily, to me, Rayleigh's is not downtown. Downtown is really, to me, the old town is, I guess I'd like that distinction of old town versus all of downtown. And old town being really Taylor and like the corner of Horseshoe Bar is included, but as you
So
have
you're saying downtown's okay, and then have the sub units, sub areas defined. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I kind of like that idea. Yeah, where we can do Gateway, Old Town, or something like that. Because the other question I have is, so like Magnolia neighborhood and stuff is not included. Is there a reason for that? I mean, those are kind of the old neighborhoods to the downtown commercial area. So I guess I'm just curious as to why we don't have the Magnolia area in our area outside of this residential.
When we were putting these committees together, we saw that as residential and therefore, did not include it, but nobody else has it. So if that's something this committee wants to talk about, that's up to you.
No, I think it's appropriate that we have that in our purview.
Jesse, go ahead.
Can I be heard?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
You caught me making dinner at the same time.
I'm sorry, Jesse.
So I was listening. It's just I was in the middle of chopping bell peppers, and it was like, oops, now I got to run back in.
Well, now we know we're going to go from your house for that, and Russ's for tri-tip later. So, all right.
Sounds good. I just prefer downtown. It's always been downtown to us.
Okay. Thank
That's
you.
all. Thanks.
We appreciate that. Okay, so
That's
sounds
fine
like
with me to have the broader term downtown with the different areas that we can put out later. I don't
Okay.
quite understand why we would include the residential Magnolia though.
well, I think we're not going to. I don't think we're going to include that in the downtown.
No.
What we're talking about now, we're just saying we should have had that area in our purview to discuss.
And I think at the next meeting, what we could do is bring up, are there any changes or that you would consider for that area, and just put that under the purview of your committee since it's under no other committee.
Okay.
Mark,
Do we need a motion for that change?
so far, I've heard a consensus. I don't know unless the committee needs something more.
And does anybody disagree with naming that downtown? I don't think there's any disagreement.
Okay.
And then, Mark, if we could have a graphic of what is going to be called the downtown for the next meeting, I think that'd be helpful for all of us.
Bet. Well, you bet, Christy. We need a graphic for that.
Yes, Christy.
Yes, Andy. We need to figure out a graphic for that.
Okay, all right. I got you. Oh,
All right.
Mary Beth, we need a graphic.
Yeah. Okay.
Rolls downhill, huh?
Always seems to stop on my desk, though. That's what I've never figured out. Okay. I think, Chair, that this might be a good spot to
Okay.
end today's discussion.
Excellent. So our next meeting will be when, Mary Beth?
Yeah, let me find that.
It's the fourth Thursday.
Fourth Thursday. Yeah, if we're going on our regular meeting schedule, it would be the fourth Thursday of the month.
October 28th.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I think from the standpoint of us preparing the materials and getting the agenda out, I was told that I shouldn't push anything faster.
That's good. Thank you.
Especially if you need a nap.
Yes. So everybody have that on their calendar. And thank you all for your time this afternoon. Appreciate it. Strong work. Thank you for our member of public, both online and here physically. All right, everybody, we'll see you perhaps in an hour or perhaps in a month or perhaps in a week. Good night, everybody. We're adjourned.
Thank you.
See you later. Bye.
Night, everybody. Thank you.